I grew up relatively poor in Ciudad Juarez, in a relatively poor neighborhood, working class neighborhood, and I didn't really have access to early education. The science wasn't there yet. Kindergarten in our community starts at 4, so I had like one extra year, if you want to look at it that way. But I started asking, like, why? How did I get so lucky? My wife and I are upper middle class Mexicans. We have state-of-the-art health insurance. We have all the benefits in the world. I get to come here once a year and be a legislator. I'm a lucky man. We're a lucky family. Well, what was different about my upbringing that allowed for my life to be what it is now? And Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I started thinking about the meaningful adult relationships I had growing up. And when I got to a man by the name of Salvador, who in English would be Savior, and he owned a little market down the street from our house in Mexico, and this man was not related to us at all. When I got to him and I counted him as a meaningful adult relationship, I was already at 15. 15 meaningful adult relationships. I remember a time we were dumb kids with an older kid and we tried to buy cigarettes from his store. You know what happened? He took us out, walked us to our house, grabbed us by our ear, and took us to our parents. That was the last time I tried it. I'm not a smoker. When I was a little older, we tried to buy a 40 of beer. Same thing. Mr. Chairman, members of this committee, 30 years ago, kids in New Mexico and in my community had an average of 12 meaningful adult relationships. In the absence of the science and of the know-how of early education back then, we at least had people who were looking after us. We had an entire village looking after us, and I think many of you would agree with that. And Mr. Chair, members of the committee, nowadays, the average New Mexican kid has an average of 1.5 meaningful adult relationships. Think about that for a minute. We go from 12 to 1.5. Not even both parents are present. Many times we have grandparents raising grandkids. We have aunties and uncles raising their nephews or nieces. In the absence of that social fabric, and we can spend hours, we can spend weeks, we can spend years trying to understand what's happened in society. In the absence of that, we know that early childhood education and access to those types of programs and services work. We know that home visitation, for example, is the best way to get parents to start establishing that meaningful relationship with their child. We know that access to childcare and pre-K allow families, particularly working class families, to take that second job, to take those extra hours at work to make ends meet and to get ahead in life. But if you have nobody to care for your child, you have to rely sometimes on people who are bad people. And we've seen those examples day in and day out. I've been in this legislature for almost 4 years, and the tragedies we've encountered are countless, and they are terrible, and they are unimaginable. Some of the things that have happened to our children over the last few years, I cannot even fathom. It's out of the sphere of understanding for me, and I know it is for you as well. So, what are we doing about it, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee? We've all worked very hard, all of us, every single one of us, Republicans and Democrats and independents, to build an early childhood education system. And I believe that we've made gains, but we cannot continue to take an incremental approach to something we know works so well.